Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every morning by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. We are 59 days away from kickoff, so tell us where you're checking in from. Tell us what you're drinking. Get your questions in. And then, of course, tell us who was your favorite 59. We love to hear that. But, guys, let's jump right into it. Recruiting. I know you got some updates going there, Jerry. What's the latest?
Yeah, I reported yesterday that Brandon Brown was going to announce on July 3rd, 4th, or 5th. It's July 4th. I came back with another post right after that. Somebody in the family reached out and said it'll be the 4th. So when you're announcing a decision and you're committed to Texas, generally not a good thing, not a good thought. I think there's a couple people in the family that prefer LSU, the relationship with Bo Davis. And we've been saying that for a while, that there was a key person in that family that really likes that relationship with Bo Davis, the belief that Bo had in Brandon when some people did not. So, at this point, July 4th, a day away, I would say it looks a lot better for LSU and even maybe Oklahoma than it does Texas, Bobby.
Yeah, I think this was going to be this one's going to hurt a little bit for Texas fans. But at the same time, Longhorns have to take it in stride and build off of what they've got. They do have a number of players right now, Jerry, that are set to make decisions this week. Nathan Tillman, one of them, out of Mansfield Timberview. Cade Phillips out of Fort Bend Hightower. Those guys set, and then Nick Townsend early next week as well. Those are three guys Longhorns are hoping to get in the fold. Not to mention Lamont Rogers, big deep offensive lineman. Out of Mesquite Horn. He's set to make a decision soon. There are just a number of guys that we're waiting on. Jonathan Cunningham announces on Friday, the linebacker out of North Crowley. I'm just looking down the list. There are a bunch. DJ Sanders, defensive lineman out of Belleville. A lot of guys right now, and we're waiting on all of them. The thing that I find interesting right now, Jerry, is I'm sitting back here and looking at it from the big picture. And it appears that Texas is recruiting well overall, but having some, starts and stops at certain positions. Defensive line, clearly one of them.
Yeah, I think that's the question. Is Texas going to have a good class? They're going to recruit another really good class. The question that we've been saying is, are they going to fill their needs? And right now, it does not look like they'll fill their needs at probably a couple of positions here in the summertime headed into the season. We'll see what happens during the season. But Texas is going to have a really good class again, but they are not filling all their positional needs, really more on defense than offense.
As of yet. Keep that in mind. I mean, that would be my caveat to all of this. I mean, look, it is a long recruiting season. And as we all know, Steve Sarkisian does not go quietly into that good night. As the poem goes, he instead tries to keep going all the way up until signing day. I feel like I don't know if they're going to be in on any of the guys they lose out here in this go round, Jerry. But new guys can emerge, and we'll have to see how it goes. Another guy went off the board yesterday, Chase Sims out of Richmond Randall, committed to A&M. That was another guy that Texas had looked at as well at defensive tackle. So it is a hot topic. There is no doubt about that right now, but we'll see how it goes. I wanted to mention this. Blake said 59 days until the season starts. Well, guess what? That means we're less than 30 days from when players report and practice starts. So the pad's getting ready to go on. It's less than 30 days away. I know people have maybe a vacation or so to get to between now and then, but it's coming. That August 1 timeline is just around the bend. So can't wait to see what happens there. Longhorns coming off a 12-2 season a year ago. I was reading, we're going to talk about it later today, but we're reading, the Field Steel magazines. Matt Miller, guy we've talked to on here before, the NFL draft expert for ESPN, came out with a mock draft. Had 3 Longhorns in the top in the first round. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I'm ready for some football. The magazine stuff's happening and everything else. So very excited.
I want to hit on this one because somebody asked, did Lamont Rogers commit to Texas last night? He put out a pro Texas tweet. No, he has not committed to Texas yet. He announces his decision July 6th. And no, privately, he is not. Nothing so far. He's just in a lot of communication with Texas. I think Missouri's very much in that one. Texas is very much in that one. We'll see if the third team emerges there to be very much in at the end. But he really likes the Missouri offensive line coach. The question is he going to go that far from home, from his mom in Mesquite? We'll see. And yes, for anybody wondering, Texas would take Lamont Rogers. Absolutely. Texas still leads for Nick Brooks out of Iowa, out of Cedar Rapids. He's just going to – his recruitment will be more of a early season decision, could go into September. Texas still looking good there. Michael Fasusi, probably a little bit of an Oklahoma lean, but that battle is ongoing.
All right, guys. Well, before we move on, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell folks out there about Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm.
Yeah, Adam's a good friend of the program. We appreciate him very much. He and his law firm have sponsored us now for more than a year. Really appreciate them. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, including ATV, motorcycle, what have you, you're going to want to reach out to Adam and his firm because they've got more than 20 years experience helping people around the state of Texas, especially in the Austin area. So if you've been injured, give Adam a shout or reach out to him on his website, loweylawfirm.com. They'll give you a free consultation to let you know what they think of your case and whether or not it's one they would take on. That's loweylawfirm.com. Give them a shout if you need help.
And as you said, Bobby, yesterday ESPN came out with that mock draft, first round draft by Matt Miller, 3 Longhorns in there. The first being Kelvin Banks at number 5, going to Washington, and then Quinn going to the Saints at number 10, followed by Isaiah Bond going to the Bengals at number 25. And definitely wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that.
Well, I thought it was interesting. The part about Kelvin Banks that was very cool. He's actually the first offensive lineman off the board. Every other mock draft I've seen to this point had Will Campbell, young man out of LSU, going first as an offensive lineman over Kelvin Banks. This is the first mock draft where I've seen Kelvin Banks be the first offensive lineman taken. He's just like Will Campbell at LSU. He's a left tackle, true junior. But start of a good apparent mock draft for the Longhorns here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that'd be huge for Kelvin Banks, obviously, to go top 10 in the draft. And we'll see how it all shakes out.
Hey, last first rounder for the Longhorns at offensive line, Jerry, I think was 2001 with Mike Williams.
I think so.
Does that make sense? Because Justin Blaylock went in the second round.
Second round to the Falcons, yeah.
It was either Mike Williams or Leonard Davis, whatever year that was when each guy came out.
Mike was younger than Leonard.
Yeah, so So it should be Mike Williams, but yeah, no, I think that'd be huge for obviously Kelvin Banks, Kyle Flood, University of Texas, and we'll see. You know, the interesting thing with the mock drafts to me is how much they change. Just like an NBA mock draft, NFL mock drafts, these way too early drafts change so much. If you take a screenshot and keep this article, just watch how much it changes after the season leading up to the draft. Cam Williams could rise up into a first rounder. 1 year starting. If people don't think so, look at Amarius Mims at Georgia last year. So Texas, not out of question. They have 2 first-round picks on the offensive line if Cam Williams holds up in pass protection this season at the Power 4 level. Mike Quinn Ewers at 10. Obviously, Carson Beck 1, Quinn 10, Connor Weigman 19. Those are the 3 first-round quarterbacks on the Texas schedule. You go down to Isaiah Bond at 25 to Cincinnati, and I'm guessing Joe Burrow would like that speed. I think Bond will have to have a really good season to get there, Bobby, but that speed, that explosive ability, he has the big catch, the big play potential. I think I worry about the consistency, but we had some of the same concerns about Xavier Worthy's consistency catching the football heading into last year. And now Worthy is a pretty special player, ball in his hands. I'm not sure Bond is that, but there were the same kind of questions. Is Worthy going to be a consistent enough pass catcher to go in the first round? People are asking the same question about Isaiah Bond. We'll see if Isaiah Bond proves the doubters that, yes, he is that level guy, as Xavier Worthy did last year. But 3 first-rounders for Texas in that mock draft. I think that number could go to 4 this year. We'll see how the season plays out for those guys. The other thing, Bobby, Texas faces a lot of really good defensive linemen. Deone Walker at Kentucky, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, probably a second-round guy, Michael Williams at Georgia. These Texas offensive linemen, Kelvin Banks, Cam Williams, those guys are going to be going up against a lot of potential first-round, second-round draft picks. So they have a chance to continue to elevate their stock on the field this season because they're going against the best.
I've got a couple things to say. One Georgetown Eagle there asked if Connor Williams went first round of the Cowboys. No, he went in the second round.
Yep.
That's the lineman out of Capel that played at Texas. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is this on Isaiah Bond. I actually rewatched the Alabama game yesterday, trying to pick up on some things and actually look at Bond and Niblack more closely in their performances. People don't realize this, but I don't remember this, but if you recall, Alabama went for 2 in that game to get within a field goal of Texas. And Isaiah Bond came down with a man of a catch on the 2-point conversion. So he has the ability to be a clutch guy catching the ball. The question will be, is he that guy every single week? And I think that's what Xavier Worthy struggled with early in his career too. And then he had the hand problem as a sophomore. Xavier wasn't consistent early. Isaiah is the same age as Xavier was now last year. Hopefully he keeps getting better. These guys can get better. And in particular, Jerry, receivers, what happens with them instead of just better, they get more consistent.
Yes.
And that's where, having watched Isaiah Bond, I watched that Alabama game. He looked really good in that. He caught a go route that was, a back shoulder from Milrow. Did a good job there. A couple other opportunities he had, he made good on. I think Texas got 2 really, really good players in Isaiah Bond. Of course, obviously a first-round draft pick projected. But Amari Niblack was actually a better blocker in that game than maybe some people want to give him credit for, too.
Yep.
That was one of the things I was looking for.
He's not averse to physical inline play.
It's not his bailiwick. It's not his strong point.
But he is a more physical player than JT Sanders at the point of attack. He's just a more physical football player in that regard. He's also a stronger player. If you see him, stronger human being. He'll do more than 8 bench press reps. I guarantee that. So there's a different physicality. I think that's the interesting thing, Bobby, going a little deeper on that. How many top 3, 4-round guys potentially are on this team? So everybody, the first round mocks get all the attention, but Cam Williams, 2nd, 3rd round pick. Could DJ Campbell, a little short, but he's got broad shoulders. He's a really good athlete. His pass pro is going to be the key this year. Now he's a little tick slow off the line at times last year, I think, in pass pro, and that doesn't translate well at the NFL level. So if he shows improvement there, which I think he will be a better player in year 2. But then you go to the other side of the ball. I mean, who knows what a Trey Moore can do, right? I mean, who knows what Ethan Burke's going to look like this year and how that could factor in. So I think that'll be interesting to see how many top 3-round players Texas has on this team that are draft eligible. That's not counting the Manny Muhammad and Anthony Hill and those guys, but draft eligible top 3-round players. I think that number could be 6 or 7, maybe even up to 8.
Good stuff, guys.
I would not. So this year, I wouldn't go that high, Jerry. I think that you look at Trey Moore and guys like that too. If Anthony Hill were going to be a draft eligible guy after this year, you could add him to that group. Maybe Manny Muhammad as well, Jerry. So I think that there's 6 to 7 guys that are possible there. That the reality of it is Texas is very, very talented. In that list, by the way, and I mentioned this on the message board over on Texas football as well, there were 5 teams, Jerry, that had 3 or more first-round draft picks plotted. Ohio State actually had 4, but their first guy didn't come off the board until number 22 or something like that. So they are a team that may not have the superstar, although I think they have a tremendous running back group. They do have depth that can come at you in waves, I think. So they had 4. Texas, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Michigan had 3. Michigan had 3 of the first, I think, 14 picks, by the way. Just to give you an example of how good they are. Will Johnson, their cornerback, was number 3 overall. Mason Graham, the defensive tackle, went top 10. And then Colston Loveland, the tight end we've talked about, he was in the top 15 of that draft as well. He had that. Georgia obviously had 3. Carson Beck was number 1 overall, the quarterback out of Georgia. I thought that was, I think that's the, what do you want to call it? That's the preemptive pick right now. That's what everybody sees going into the season. Carson Beck will be the number 1 pick. The one that was interesting to me was Shadur Sanders at number 2. He has done well at Colorado and played better than anticipated. We will see if he ends up there this year or not. I mean, it's going to be one of those issues that we'll have to watch. Ewers was the 3rd quarterback off the board, by the way.
This is how much the mock draft changes. So Texas had 5 guys drafted in the first 2 rounds in this April NFL draft. Byron Murphy wasn't a first rounder before the season. Xavier Worthy was mentioned. Tavondre Sweat wasn't a second round mock guy. Jonathan Brooks certainly wasn't a second round mock guy. A.D. Mitchell was not a second round mock guy. So that's how much these mock drafts are going to change. Texas had 5 players go in the first 2 rounds. Only one of those guys was legitimately in all those mocks a year ago right now in the first 2 rounds. So that's how much this can change. So when you look at Texas, a Cam Williams, like I referenced Amarius Mims, Cam Williams has a good enough season on the field this year in pass protection as a year 1 starter. I think he's going to vault into the top 2 rounds of mock drafts. Could an Ethan Burke, if he ascends a little bit more, maybe, possibly. Could DJ Campbell find his way up into the late second round? Not out of the question, but Texas is going to have some guys that are going to move up into those first 3 rounds of the mock, because these mock drafts change so much with the draft eligible players.
Hey, I had a question. Connor Weigman, quarterback, Texas A&M, actually, they had him mocked in the first round as well. Here's what I would say to that. And people are saying, well, he's never healthy. Absolutely true. He's yet to make it through a full season healthy. However, is he talented? There is no question that dude's talented, Jerry. He's got an absolute hose for an arm. He's fairly athletic. I think he's a bright guy. If he is healthy, I could see him going that high if he didn't have the injury history. No matter what he does this year, even if he's healthy the full year, he's still going to have the injury history. The other thing I would add is people say, well, he can't go that high. Well, A.D. Mitchell was injured for 2 years and went in the second round.
Well, quarterbacks are overdrafted every year right now.
And quarterbacks, yes. And quarterbacks, because of the new rule that allows them to that pays them a certain amount, if you catch one young, you really get some bonus time out of them or bonus money out of them. So they get prioritized in drafts. I
think Weigman's going to be very interesting because it's not his just having an injury history, but it's the knocks up here.
I know, that's what I'm saying. One more, and is that too many?
That's what's going to be interesting about him. If it was just a couple of meniscus tears, that's one thing. But it's when you start talking about this, that's what'll be interesting to me is how does that affect his draft? Because I agree with Bobby. I mean, I think Riley Leonard, Jackson Dart, I think there's a number of quarterbacks that could vault their way up into the first round conversation because at the end of the day, there's going to be 5 or 6 probably drafted in the first round next year. It's an overdrafted position right now. If you look at how many of these guys are actually hitting at that rate, it's good. Hey, it's a good time to be a quarterback, whether you're going to go into the NFL or college because of NIL, the overpay for the quarterback position in NIL. But it'll be interesting to see because so anytime when also looking at that mock draft right now, take 2 of those guys out, and no 2 more quarterback slots are going in. So when you look at those guys late in the first round, 2 more quarterbacks are going into those slots. It's going to be 4 or 5, maybe even 6 in the first round. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Hey, Jerry, this one I thought was a good comment, or at least one to contemplate. Hioli Frioli, 93. Connor Wegman is David Ash 2.0. I think Wegman is a more talented player than David Ash was.
Stronger arm. Yeah.
Stronger
Better
arm.
player on the move.
Yeah. But to his point, the head injuries.
Yeah.
That's where you just circle it and say, maybe.
By the way, we're having a pretty interesting discussion on the chat about Nike in Texas and Oregon. This has been going on for years and years in basketball too. I mean, it doesn't. Texas isn't walking away from Nike over football recruiting. If some guys go in Oregon, no chance that happens. I mean, look, there's the good and the bad. There's the good and the bad of this, but Nike is a huge positive. You want to be Nike with Nike if you're Texas. Huge positive. Look, I mean, so there's people are thinking about the football now, but Kevin Durant doesn't come to Texas if you're not a Nike school. Okay, so there's a lot of things that go into this. The football kids, they still like Nike. Phil Knight's getting some stuff done. You give him credit at Oregon, but you don't walk away from Nike. They're the number 1 brand in college athletics. Somebody's saying Adidas pays 2 times more. Okay, I mean, but I don't think it'll happen. You stay with Nike.
Texas wants to affiliate with elite brands.
Yes,
that's one of the things that it's one of the reasons why Texas went away from Reebok back in the day, Jerry. They took more money from Reebok at the outset. It's 30 years ago, 40 years ago, back when I was in school. And that's not what Texas wants to be. Texas, when they affiliate their brand, they want to affiliate at a high level. If they're going to do it in a very visible arena, like putting their tag on a jersey, it's going to have to be with a high level company. And, Texas is not going to pick up pennies to walk over dollars in that regard. People like to wear Nike gear more than they like to wear Adidas. Is a great brand. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of them, but it's not the same.
Yeah, and Adidas in football, they got a ways to go.
Well, at least American football.
Good point. Good point.
They dominate the other type of football.
All right, guys. Well, something else that I wanted to talk about this morning here is they came out with a list. I want to give credit to College Football Report on Twitter. These are the top schools in college football revenue for last year. Texas, number 1 with $182 million. That's $30 million more than number 2, which is Georgia at $152. And then, as you can see, Oklahoma, Michigan, Tennessee, Alabama, Ohio State, Auburn, Nebraska, and Penn State round out the top 10. And then A&M down there at 18, Texas Tech at number 20. But number 1, are y'all surprised by Texas standing on this list? And number 2, what else sticks out to you on this list?
Texas Tech, I had an Oregon based on the chat. But Oregon 21st there, Ole Miss 24th. Look, I think the top 2, not a surprise at all. Michigan 4, 10. I'm not really surprised by this top list. I thought Ohio State might be 3 on this list, Bobby. But I mean, what are we're talking about?
Other lists will have Ohio State overall higher because it's not just college football revenue. Right. This is just football revenue.
Yeah, and we got the other one too. We'll get to that one in a minute.
Okay,
but as you said, just college football.
By the way, Eli Drinkwitz, Missouri's getting the most bang for their buck with Drinkwitz
at 47. Yeah. See, I mean, look, here's the problem with the Big 12. It was Texas and OU, and then everybody else. Everybody else is down there. Texas, being part of the college football playoff, certainly a big role in that. But my take on it is this: look at the numbers. Look at the true numbers. Texas is 20% higher than second place.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what else to tell you other than that. That $20 million difference or whatever that is, $30 million difference close to it, is almost the same amount that Kansas got altogether. Kansas only pulled in $45 million from football total. Texas almost lapped the field by that amount. That's what that tells me, just how powerful that single sport is at the University of Texas.
Then, as I said, guys, we'll look at the top schools in athletic revenue.
Look how much that changes.
Yeah, Ohio State number 1, Texas A&M number 2, and then Texas right behind them at number 3, followed by Michigan and Georgia to round out the top 5. But Ohio State and Texas A&M neck and neck on that one, and Texas only $8 million behind. I know only $8 million, but when you're talking about hundreds of millions, that's not that much. Then Oklahoma down there at number 11. Y'all's thoughts on this one?
What, Bobby, my question for you is how much is this going to change moving into the SEC for Texas with the new
a lot, because that's a bonus $30 million to Texas.
Yeah.
From its previous number.
Yeah.
So if you recalculate this in a year, you're looking at Texas being higher. The SEC certainly pays out more than the Big 12 did. I have no look. When you start talking about full revenue, you're talking about donations. You're talking about a number of different aspects, seat licenses, suites, everything. This is why, in defense of Trev Alberts, and I made fun of him a little bit for saying this, he said that college football doesn't have a revenue problem. It has an expense problem. Okay. He's right in some respects. But you still don't say that and have your coaches hear it and then fire one of their assistants or let go of them. So my point being here is college football does not have a revenue problem. You might have an expense problem, but you don't necessarily have one, Trev, or anybody else.
Yeah,
that would be what I would say.
And by the way, obviously, this is public universities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Notre Dame's the only one.
Notre Dame, UCLA.
USC. No,
yeah,
Notre Dame, USC.
It's amazing. Yeah, so it's amazing how low UCLA is on this list to me. I mean, amazing how low they are. I mean, San Diego State's within $2 million of them, not in a Power 5 conference. That's amazing to me on UCLA. Yeah, you're correct. Private schools are included.
They had a good football team this year. UCLA had a good football team. Not great, but good. One of the better ones they've had.
Kelly leaves his post to be an OC, and you're seeing the reason why right here.
Yep. Lack of support.
Yep.
That's one thing that Texas fans look, and this week we should bring this up in regards to this. Think about the Texas send-off joining the celebration to join the SEC. And compare that to what you saw at Oklahoma. I mean, Jerry, we were out there. There were at least 30,000 people milling around at Texas. 30, maybe more. I don't know what the official guess was or whatever they come out with. And then you look at Oklahoma and, maybe 5,000 people showed up. Texas enjoys that level of fandom and support. So, yeah, $76 million to Jimbo is one hell of an expense. That's true. Maybe that's the part. But hey, look, Texas had to deal with Tom Herman.
Yeah,
so it happens. I'm interested to see where that looks like next year in the SEC, because Texas should get a $25 to $30 million shot in the arm on that list.
Definitely. Okay, guys. Well, before we move on to some questions, and obviously plenty of time to get your questions in, so please do so. Jerry, it is your time to shine. We're going to let you tell folks out there about Manscaped.
Well, look, it's a summer barbecue performance package, guys. And I'm at the beach this morning. I'm actually in Florida, wanted to hear the ocean while we're doing the show here. So if it's the sizzle alert this summer, let the only thing smoking at your barbecue be the grill, not your grooming game. Get ready for the ultimate cookout season with Manscaped. Whether you're flipping burgers or cannonballing into the pool, make sure your meat looks neat with the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. Fire up your grooming routine and keep it cool with Manscaped. Head to manscaped.com and use code ONTEXAS, all caps, for 20% off and free shipping. Let's make this summer sizzle for all the right reasons. And guys, if after the meat looks neat, you got to have the crop soother, the crop preserver, the anti-chafing ball deodorant. For those sunny beach days and barbecue parties, don't leave home without the crop preserver anti-chafing ball deodorant. Let the sun see you shine, not sweat.
Oh, man. All right, here. Let's see if I can get that. Thank you, Bobby. My mouse was acting a little crazy there. Okay, well, let's get to some questions here, and let's start with some team-related questions. We haven't talked about the team much today outside of the draft. E. Kim says, good morning from Rockford, Illinois. If Vosick stays healthy, do you see him getting 4 sacks this season?
Ooh.
I do.
I do.
I'll tell you why I do. I think that's his specialty.
Yeah.
Like Barron Sorrell, did he have 5.5 sacks last year, Jerry? 6 the year previous, something like that. I think that Barron Sorrell is a really good strong side defensive end.
Yep.
But that's what he is. When he gets sacks, it's effort sacks. It's when the pocket breaks down elsewhere. He's not getting to the quarterback kind of innately quickly. You know what I mean by that? And part of that is his role on the team. He's a strong side defensive end, right? Vosick kind of plays through that role, in my opinion. He's one of those that actually is more of even though he's a strong side end, he's actually more of a pass rusher naturally than Sorrell. And so I think he's going to get more opportunities. I really do. I think as long as he is healthy, and that would be my one thing that I would say, hey, wait a minute, is whether or not he's healthy. But if he's healthy, I would be game to take that and possibly take the over. Look, I think they're going to get after the quarterback this year. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. And obviously UTSA people will try to get the ball out quick. These 3 teams, more likely, especially UTSA and ULM, I could see Vosick getting 2.5, 3 sacks in these games right here. He's going to play. Texas is going to rotate more defensive players. He's going to have some favorable matchups. He has a great motor. He's coming in behind guys after starting linemen are already tired from a couple of series in the heat. I could see Vosick getting close to that number in these 3 games.
And then our next question, fellas, comes from Trace Vlogs. I hope I'm saying that right. Who do you think Sark will take to the SEC media days? Of course, Quinn, maybe Alfred Collins, probably. Who do y'all think?
Good question.
I wouldn't be surprised. So Jahdae Barron went last year, by the way. And so he was there. He and Quinn would be the only 2 returners to that group. So I think Jahdae likely comes. I would not be surprised if Kelvin Banks.
He's your first team All-American.
Yeah. Maybe Jake Majors and maybe Anthony Hill this go round. Maybe Anthony Hill. And if Barron doesn't go, probably Manny Muhammad.
Or David Bender.
Yeah. I would bet that David Benda is trotted out there a little bit because he's well-spoken, articulate, and he is a program guy, Jerry.
Yeah.
Program guy, period. That Sark likes to tout development. He's a 5th-year guy that they poured some heart and soul into, and it's starting to show that value. So, yeah, I would agree with that. Jerry, you and I are going to be there.
Yeah.
Sark, I think, speaks on Wednesday, 2 weeks from today.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we're going up to Dallas. We'll be there for the whole thing. We're going to be broadcasting, by the way, Coffee and Football from Radio Row. at the SEC media days. Hopefully, we get some SEC coaches and players coming in and visiting with us during that time.
By the way, Ekim, do you see? I was going to bring this up. Do you see 1.5 OL being drafted in 2025? I'll take the over on that.
I think Jake Major is going to get drafted, and I think Kelvin Banks will too. So I think that's an easy 1.5, even if other people don't go pro, Jerry.
Yeah. So here's a good question too on D-line recruiting. What happened with the DT Morris you mentioned some time ago? Derry Morris kid I really liked out of Spruce Creek in Port Orange, Florida. Should be. I don't know if he's committed to Georgia Tech, but he should be going there. Look, I think his upside's really high. I would have liked to see Texas make a run at him. It'll be interesting to see who Texas makes a run at senior seasons. It's going to have to be a Derry Norris. It's going to have to be a kid that senior tape maybe exceeds the expectations, that's committed to a Georgia Tech, because it's real easy to say, oh, just go in and go battle for Dylan Battle or Chase Sims or somebody like that. Well, Dylan Battle's probably going to LSU. Chase Sims just committed to A&M. You're not flipping those guys. So you're going to have to find some guys on that Derry Norris level, senior year from high school, that a couple of those guys that you really like that fit the profile you're looking for, to try to flip and go in on senior year. But it's not just going to be, you're not going to go in and get Chase Sims from Texas A&M. It's not happening. You had your opportunity. You're not. Dylan Battle's probably going to LSU. You're not going to do that. You're not going to go up to Mansfield Timberview and flip the kid, the D lineman that's committed to LSU. That's not how the game works. So they're going to have to find the Derry Norris type guys who really look good as seniors, have that frame they're looking for, that aren't committed to one of those power schools and a power program, and try to go get that kid. That's all you're going to be. That's what you're going to have to do.
Okay, we have a couple of super chats. Y'all are cracking me up in the chat. We have a couple of super chats that we need to get to, and we'll start with this one from Jack. Thank you, Jack. As always, we definitely appreciate your support each and every day. He says, Bobby, please update the Freer band. If every On Texas footballer gave just 40 cents, we could get this done for Bam Bam. So I'm going to let you, in case people miss that, I'm going to let you tell folks about it.
Absolutely. We're up over $7,000 now. They need $20,000 to get there. They're still doing fundraising locally as well. I talked to Steve McKegg, one of the board members there at Freer University, our Freer School District. They are hopeful they'll be able to say yes. Let's just please keep pushing that. Again, we're trying to get them to be able to participate in the parade for Steve McMichael, the Texas great that went on for a long career with the Chicago Bears as well, to get them up there to be able to play at his induction ceremony in the Hall of Fame on August 3rd. Steve McMichael will be inducted into the Hall of Fame in the NFL on August 3rd, along with guys like Andre Johnson, Julius Peppers, a lot of elite players. Steve McMichael will be up there. We're trying to get his band up there. When we started this on Monday, we only had $1,000. So I want to say thank you to those of you that have participated. This is a great cause, in my opinion. Get these kids there with a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Thank you.
Good stuff.
And Blake, can you put the link in the chat too?
I just did while you were talking, so it's in there, and I'll post it again here in just a little bit to give everybody a refresher before the end.
I want to say this. I donated to it personally, so this isn't me trying to, do something crazy or whatever. I donated to it personally because I think it's a great situation. Those young kids want to go up there and support a Texas great, and the community does as well, and is willing to try to make that happen and put some elbow grease behind it. So I want to try to help them, if at all possible, celebrate Steve McMichael, who's battling ALS, by the way, if you're unfamiliar with that.
And then we have a super chat from Justin Yarbrough. Thank you as well, Justin. He says, all these guys committing to Oregon. How many actually end up signing there, though, because of the distance? On3 says the average distance for recruits is about 1,300 miles. It's a long way from home.
Depends on how much you win.
Jerry, but on average, they lose 3 or 4 guys peel back from their recruiting class on average after summer commitments. over history. You and I have followed this enough to say that in proximity to home, it's one of those factors. But I've got to be brutally honest. I don't know that some of these guys that Texas wants to peel back are necessarily going to peel back.
Right.
And that's the bigger point. Also on Derry Norris, Jerry, I want to ask you this as it relates to defensive tackle. One of the things that I see Texas doing, and I want to get your take on it, they are going after bigger bodied guys on the defensive line, which are more rare than the small. I mean, they want the 320, 330 guys, or that can get there pretty easily, right? That's why even a Brandon Brown for Texas right now was on the small side of what they want, ideally. Not saying they're right, but how much does Texas wanting those big-bodied guys preclude and rule out a guy maybe like a Landon Rink, right? That's 290 or 285, and not going to be able to get to 320. Now, you and I know that there are anomalies. Byron Murphy was an anomaly, right? But that desire to have those bonus-sized players on the interior, they did want Zion Williams. They did want Josiah Sharma. They thought those guys would end up being 325, 340. That cuts down the number of guys even available to you. Like Derry Norris, can he even get there? Is that one of the reasons why they necessarily didn't bring him in? The desire for Texas and what Sark's trying to do on defense, he wants those big bodied guys. Is that having some effect on the total number?
It'll be interesting to look back on in 2 or 3 years because, Chase Sims is 6'2.5", 6'3", 300 pounds. Not a small guy. Mike Elko took him.
Yep.
Dylan Battle's 6'2", 310. Probably going to LSU. I mean, the issue potentially is what you want and what you passed up on. And some of those guys you passed up on are now going to your rivals and your competition. So the look back in 2 or 3 years will be interesting on this because if Landon Rink, who has a motor, he's going to probably exceed a recruiting ranking because of his motor. And a Chase Sims is a bigger body guy. He'll weigh 310 for 315 down the line. If those guys go to A&M and they're really good players, it's not going to be the best look if you didn't offer it. Dylan Battle goes to LSU and is a really good player, but that's not the best look if you didn't offer him. That's just the reality. Your offer versus bring him in for an official visit.
Push.
Yeah.
Push.
So that's what will be interesting to look at down the line on these guys. And there aren't as many 6'4", 320, 315 guys in high school. I mean, there's a reason that Jordan Davis went to Georgia as a 3-star recruit and ended up in the first round, right? There just aren't a lot of those guys. You have to develop those guys. But I think the look back is going to be interesting on this class and who was pushed and who wasn't pushed and how good those guys actually end up being.
Yeah, I think part of that, who was pushed and wasn't pushed, part of it's the size. I really do believe that.
No, for sure.
Sark believes in big humans, and not just on the offensive side of the ball. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
We have a couple more super chats we need to knock out, fellas. This first one more of a comment from Major Alexander. He says most of the guys that signed with Oregon will transfer in 2 years. They'll get paid and then move to the SEC.
Maybe. It all depends on how much they win and how long Dan Lanning stays at Oregon. Look, Oregon is being hyped as a national championship contender. If Dan Lanning delivers on that, that changes the game up there for them with what we've talked about in the past. But I do think you see guys transfer out there after a year, but a Johnny Bowens transferring out from Oregon after 1 year, I don't think he was homesick. I think Oregon recruited over him.
Yeah. I would add this to Oregon, for some context. Oregon had 2 guys listed in first round mocks that we were talking about earlier. One of them was Evan Stewart, who is a transfer from Texas A&M. The other was a Johnny Cornelius, a offensive lineman that also was a transfer a year ago.
Yeah.
So while Dylan Gabriel was not a first-round mock for obvious reasons, even though he's an highly effective college quarterback, they have some talent up there right now. And to Jerry's point, they are recruiting at a very, very high level. They really are. And
I had a Pac-12 assistant tell me last year, Oregon was the only team in the Pac-12 that looked like an SEC team physically and speed-wise. Now, Washington was the number 2 on that list, but they thought Oregon looked like an SEC team when they walked out onto the field and when you watched them on tape.
Yeah, or Washington didn't have that many dudes on defense. They had hellacious dudes on offense now. They had a quarterback and 3 receivers go in the first two rounds. They're the only team that was as talented as Texas in those 2 positions last year.
And our last super chat we need to knock out comes from Jason. Thank you, Jason. He says, when it's all about NIL, why wouldn't you wait and come in late with the higher offer?
Well, first thing, Texas doesn't want it to be all about NIL. That's the reality of it. And you can beat up on Sark if you want to for that, but he's not going to change his feelings on that. He wants guys that want to be at Texas first, and NIL can be a part of that. But it's not going to be going to the highest bidder, maybe like a guy from TCU that did that this offseason. That's just not the game Sark's wanting to play. He thinks it is divisive in the locker room, I believe. It doesn't mean that Texas isn't going to be competitive, but they're not going to, blow up the whole thing over it. It's if it's the last man standing, Texas does not lead with NIL. That is, even though you see the Lambos, the whatever cars you see, Texas and the coaches in their discussions with players do not lead with NIL. Some schools do lead with NIL to get them in the game. Texas doesn't do that. So doesn't mean that somebody's right and another person's wrong. It's just I'm telling you the way Texas likes to do things. And they're going to Steve Sarkisian wants that guy to be at Texas for Texas, and then let's talk NIL.
Odin Horns has a pretty funny one. I remember this. Colorado called Oregon players small in the field prior to the game and lost 42-6 and got pushed around. That was actually pretty funny. I mean, they got obliterated physically and athletically.
Oh, I think Dion got obliterated mentally in that game. Dion thought he had – I like Dion in some ways. In other ways, I think he's a piece of work. But he thought he had figured out college football. Now, college football figured him out on that day. Just run the ball right at his defense.
All right. Well, we got some more team-related questions here, a lot of them actually, so we're going to jump back over to that from Vivek B. He says, how does Niblack blocking compare to JT Sanders?
I think he's more willing. Bobby mentioned this early in the show. More willing, more physical, stronger body frame player. Plays stronger, too, on contact and through contact. I think he's going to be better. It's not like it's going to be a strength of his, but he's going to be better as a blocker when called upon than JT Sanders was because he's stronger and more willing.
I mentioned this early in the program. I rewatched the Alabama game yesterday. I go through and try to rewatch every game at least twice in the offseason. And yesterday I finally had some time and watched Alabama. Jerry's right. He's more willing. He is, and I know this is hard to describe if you don't know what I'm talking about. He's a naturally strong person.
Yeah.
Now, he is not very big. He's thin, comparatively speaking. But thin people can be naturally strong and physical. And he's got a little junk in the trunk a little bit with him.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying he's, Gunnar Helm even, or a plus blocker like a Jeff Swaim that played at Texas, or an Andrew Beck, right? That I'm not saying that. He has longer arms than JT Sanders too, so he can latch a little bit better and just get that extra little piece of someone. I came out of that thinking that Isaiah Bond is a tough dude. These are my takeaways. For a receiver, Isaiah Bond is a tough dude.
Agree.
He's fast, do all these other things, but he's not afraid of any kind of hitting or any of that stuff. I also came away with the fact that Amari Niblack was naturally stronger than people want to give him credit for, because all you see typically, if you're watching that game, and all of us watch Texas, Alabama, is the catch over the middle, and then he avoided 4 or 5 Texas defenders into the end zone. He is more, he is long and willing he is not contact averse even when he's in line. And I thought that on a couple of run plays, he actually thought he did a nice job. So.
Our next question comes from Jawan on Twitter, and he says, besides Colin Simmons, are there any freshmen that will get reps in the big games on defense?
I think you could see a special teams included.
Well, that's a no-brainer.
Xavier Filsaime, Jordan Johnson-Rubel. I could see that happen for sure. Are we talking true freshmen, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Alex January, as the season moves along, wouldn't shock me.
That's what I've got. I put a thing by him. Colin Simmons, yes. Jerry, I don't think Anthony Smith's going to be a guy. The one that I don't think Wardell Mack or Kobe Black are there at corner, based on what I saw in the spring, unless there is some sort of physical issue with one of the starters, right? Then we could see that process expedite. What about Santana Wilson? I'm interested to see how he looks this fall. We haven't seen him with the other group on defense.
I think if Santana had been a midterm graduate, he'd be in the conversation, because I think he comes in advanced technically. The big thing with him that I think he has to kind of prove, from my point of view, I'm not saying he's not, but is he going to match the physicality required right away? Manny Muhammad did in that spring after graduating from South Oak Cliff. I think if Santana Wilson had been in for the spring, I think you naturally have that spring to learn how to match the physicality required at this level. If he does that in August ahead of schedule, then I think he's going to be competing for potentially a 4th corner spot at some point during the season. I think the good thing about that question, by the way, guys, is there's not a lot of answers. It's an experienced team, some older guys, stronger guys on defense at a number of positions. So if a freshman is on the field, let's take out special teams. If a freshman is on the field in key situations, he's a pretty elite freshman on defense for this Texas team coming up.
And then our next question comes from Football Texas. He says, is it possible that Texas might be like 2019 LSU, only in terms of having a really great offense, but maybe not a dominating defense?
And the crazy thing about that LSU team is they had a ton of guys drafted on both defense too. So it's not like they didn't have talent. They just they had a lot of guys drafted off that team defensively.
Aranda got the Baylor job off of a defense that didn't play very well.
Yeah,
in that season for LSU. I do think, and I agree with Jerry in this. I think Texas actually will be a better defense than that LSU defense. Okay, and I will say this: that LSU defense, while it got run over a lot, it was opportunistic at times. They had some guys that would make sacks and make plays on the ball. So when you're scoring 40 a game with Justin Jefferson and Joe Burrow, and 4 offensive linemen in the NFL, I think that you're gonna do well. My thought process is that Texas, is Quinn Ewers going to be as good as Joe Burrow? He doesn't escape the pocket as well as Joe Burrow. That's the one thing. Like, I feel like Joe Burrow makes great, quick decisions. I don't know that Quinn is that quick. And Joe Burrow is a great scrambler for what he is. Justin Jefferson is maybe the best wide receiver in football today. So it's hard to Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
Those guys are freaky.
I want to throw out the names. That LSU defense. Now, part of it was that Alabama was absolutely loaded on offense at that time as well. But that LSU team had Caleb Von Chase on and Patrick Queen, 2 first-round linebackers, 2 DBs that went in the second round, Delpit, Christian Fulton. Linebacker that went in the third round, D tackle went in the fourth round. In the 2020 draft, in the 2021 draft, guys also on that team, 4th rounder at linebacker, 4th rounder at DB, 3 more DBs, 2 more DBs that got drafted. Oh, by the way, Derek Stingley was a freshman corner on that team that went in the first round. Neil Farrell was one of the deep line rotation guys and went in the 4th round in 2022, as was a couple other linebackers. That LSU defense was loaded with talent. Maybe not Alabama, Georgia loaded at the time defensively, but they were loaded on defense with talent.
Yeah, but they still weren't a good.
They weren't a good defense.
Yeah, and that's what surprised me. Why Aranda got the job at Baylor.
Okay, our next question will come from, and it's a super chat from Dax Kelm. He says, with Bo gone, how are the coaches using either Sweat or Murphy as recruiting assets for defensive linemen?
That's the fun games in recruiting for me. Texas can use those guys, and not just that. Ojimo, Keandre Coburn, the guys that have been drafted since Sark got to Austin, right? You can use those guys unless you're recruiting against LSU. So that's the games within the games of recruiting. You can't really use that against if your competition's Bo Davis and LSU right now, because he just comes back and says, I coached all those guys. They weren't any good before I got there. And so that's the games within recruiting. I think it's a positive, net positive for Texas. I think it's going to be a positive for Texas, the more guys they have drafted moving forward. But in that question specifically, it's a good one to use unless you're going up against one guy who happened to be there and gets the credit for developing those players. So those are the games within recruiting that make it fun.
And others will use them against it. So
yes, 100%.
You know, those, oh, well, that guy's not even there anymore. You guarantee you Odell Haggins at Florida State.
He 100% said that.
Made sure Myron Charles and Kevin Wynn knew that Kenny Baker wasn't the guy. Oh, that's not even the right coach. Even though the Texas program and Torrey Becton should get a level of credit for developing those guys. And Steve Sarkisian for that point.
Yep, no doubt. Hey, did we get a a super chat from UT Boy?
No, that's what I was just talking to him about. I don't see anything on our end, UT Boy, but like I said in the chat, if you'll send it regular, I'll make sure to ask it there for sure.
Hey, Blake, I want to say thank you once again to our sponsor. Each and every Wednesday live stream brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy at the Lowy Law Firm. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, motorcycle accident, even an ATV, and think you might be due some compensation because you were injured, give Adam and his team a shout over at loweylawfirm.com. They've got more than 20 years experience in the industry and helping other people get the compensation they deserve. Again, loweylawfirm.com. Adam Lowy and his group, really appreciate them. They give you a free consultation if you are injured and need help and need possible representation.
Okay, and then we got time for a few more questions here, fellas. We'll do a couple more team ones and then a couple of recruiting questions to end the show. Jimmy wants to know y'all's thoughts on Gavin Holmes. He seems underrated. Bobby, I know you were a big fan. I'll let you start.
I still am.
Still am.
Look, yeah, I mean, he came in and last year, Texas was really high on him out of Wake Forest, 2-year starter at Wake Forest. And he still was the fastest corner on the team last year. Okay. But he was not physical enough. He was used to doing a little ole out there on the edge because they did not ask him to do that often in the Wake Forest defensive style. So at Wake Forest, he literally was a speed corner. And he is fast and he is long, Jerry. So he's got long arms. his physicality in the spring was questioned over the winter break, and he came back in the spring. Jerry, you go back and watch the spring game. He made 2 tackles where he physically tried to get up in there and on it.
Yeah,
he took that criticism or constructive criticism to heart and is trying to do something about it. The question I have now is, where does he fit with Javion Cole coming in, with Manny Muhammad there as well? How they add and how they construct this secondary is going to be very interesting, because I'm high on Gavin Holmes, I'm high on Javion Cole, and I'm high on Manny Muhammad. All 3 of those guys I think are good players. We know what Jahdae Barron can do. The one that I keep hearing great things about is a backup, and that's Jalen Gilbo.
Yeah.
There is not a person you talk to that doesn't mention him as somebody to watch. Then you have the secondary. I think the addition of Andrew Makuba was a little bit of a godsend, to be fair, after you lose Jaron Thompson and Keaton Crawford to the transfer portal. Frankly, I don't think Texas tried to keep those 2 as part of the process. And so you add Andrew Makuba to Michael Taft, Derek Williams, maybe Jelani McDonald. You see where he's at. This secondary has the makings of a much better secondary. I'm not so sure, though, Jerry, that it's not a lot like the wide receiver group.
Yeah.
In that early, it needs some cohesiveness working together to find out what the real parts of the puzzle or pieces of the puzzle are. And then they get better as they have more reps together.
Yeah.
I think secondary.
I think early in the season with Texas, I think it'll be fascinating to watch. Early in the season, it'll be Quinn, offensive line, tight ends, running backs. Those are guys who are going to have to be the difference early. And that doesn't mean that wide receivers and the speed doesn't factor in. But I think the wide receiver position will be the last one to maximize on this team on offense. I think on defense, couldn't agree more. I think the edge position, the defensive line as a whole, because they got the older portal guys, they're going to be ahead. I do believe that. I think they're going to be ahead. I'm not talking about interior D-line guys putting up numbers, but I'm just saying ahead as far as their play. I think that, and then I think the back end is going to be the last one to kind of follow and maximize what they can do this season as well. Somebody asked about punter earlier. Want to address that. So Texas did not take a punter out of the portal. So it's who's on campus plus Michael Kern, who's now on campus, will battle for that job. Somebody also asked this, Jay Lee. I mentioned this earlier, or Lee. What about Dylan Battle? Not 5-star. Really, I like him as a prospect. I think he'll end up probably at LSU as of today, but we'll see if that changes. If Zion Williams and Brandon Brown commit to LSU on the 4th, does that change anything with Dylan Battle? JL said this. Why does everybody seem to be whistling past the graveyard in our defensive recruiting? My thing is with that, honestly, is I'm waiting to see what happens in December, because the worst thing I could look really bad right now come December. That's my thing. Recruiting or signing days December 4th. There's a long way to go in this, and Bobby's reacting, but there's a long way to go in defensive and recruiting in this cycle, period. So D-line has work to do. But
here's my point on that. Nobody's whistling past the graveyard. I'm not worried about defense. People are saying, why are you worried about defensive recruiting? I'm not worried about defensive recruiting as a whole. I'm worried about defensive line recruiting. Okay. Texas got the 2 edges they wanted.
Yeah.
Just got Smith-Orogbo 2 days ago. Okay. Everything is not going to be Lance Jackson. They didn't have a higher ranked strong side defensive end on the table. I mean, Marco Jones, they did not push for at the end because they got Smith-Orogbo. Okay. So Marco Jones went to A&M. Good for A&M. But Texas got the two edges they want. They've got Bo Barnes. Okay. If not the top linebacker on the board, certainly one of the top 2 or 3. Okay. Caleb Chester. They've got Cade Phillips, who they've identified from the outset as probably the top safety in the state, if not the country, for them. Okay. He announces on the 6th. Caleb Chester, they like as a corner. It's not all of defensive recruiting. That's why I'm not whistling past the graveyard. And we have covered defensive line recruiting ad nauseum on here. So I'm not concerned about defensive recruiting. I really am not. I am concerned about defensive line recruiting because right now they have no commitments and you're waiting on DJ Sanders and you only took 2 last year. Okay. I get it. That's where I'm at right now. I'm not sitting here, and you lose 5, by the way, potentially defensive linemen, defensive tackles this offseason. So I am concerned a bit about defensive line recruiting. I'm not concerned about defensive recruiting overall.
Yeah, I agree. That's where I'm at.
Excuse me. We got a couple of super chats left before we get out of here, and then that'll wrap it up. JS, thank you, JS. He said, I saw the Coach Sark interview with Joe Clapp. Is Coach Sark telling the public too many of his trade secrets? Good culture is difficult to develop, and every inch on the competition matters.
I don't think so. I think that those coaches share what they do with other coaches willingly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the unique things about college, about football. And this goes all the way down to the high school level. I mean, if you've ever been to the Texas High School Coaches Association meeting, I'll never forget. I mean, I was sitting there listening to Art Briles talk about his offense back in 1994 to a group of Texas high school coaches and giving them all the clues, all the hints, everything they needed to do. And it's a group of 100 plus coaches sitting there listening to it. Coaches are very willing to help other coaches in the name of helping those players and the young men that play football. It's a camaraderie, a brotherhood of sorts among coaches that they look at it in a way where, yeah, maybe I might get a little bit this year where I sneak up on people, but I'm going to put it on film and it's over. You know, I'm not going to be able to hide it anymore. And so they share with each other. They really do. And I think it's because they think let's make the profession better, make the sport better, and especially they all are in this to pouring it into the young people that they coach, especially at the high school and college level. I really believe that.
To Bobby's point, I think people will be surprised how much these guys talk.
Yeah,
especially in the off season.
All right, last one, guys, for today, and it's a super chat from Jay Lee. Thank you, Jay Lee, as always. He says, even though I think we all think it will improve, if the secondary doesn't improve this year, will a secondary coaching change be inevitable?
Yes, but I think it will improve. I think it's going to improve. We've talked about it over and over because of the edge pressure that they probably will be able to get. Even if, look, I even go back to this, guys. Nobody could run on Texas last year. So everybody had to throw the ball and be good at throwing the ball. I think that the secondary number is going to improve just off of that. I know that sounds crazy, but you become less of the focal point at this year. There are going to be some teams that really try to run at Texas, and some teams will be successful this year, I believe. Unlike last year. So your numbers are going to improve. So I'm not really worried about the numbers. And I will add this, the big piece, and I remember being in the preseason media day at Texas with Pete Kwiatkowski last year. And he came up to the mic and he literally within the first 2 minutes said, I want more turnovers. I want to be better on money downs, 3rd and 4th down. And I want to get more people to the ground, more sacks. Okay. So they did better in all 4 of those categories. Nowhere in there did he say we need to improve our pass defense. However, for them, improving in pass defense was a key part of 3rd and 4th down, in my opinion, especially 3rd down. And they improved hellaciously year over year on 3rd down defense. So in some ways, you can say that the numbers don't look good at Texas. third down defense last year was much improved, and the secondary was a part of that, in my opinion.
And look, I'm looking for 39 to 40 sacks to be a key number for Texas this year.
That's very high, Jerry. Very high.
That's the number there. I think they need to get to. They had 32 last year. I think Texas needs to approach 39, 40 sacks. If they do that, I think that will help the secondary greatly.
Okay, guys, we got one other super chat that just came in from UT Boy, and we'll end the show on this one. He says, happy 4th of July. Of course, we will be here tomorrow, guys. We will be doing an Independence Day show, so we'll be back with y'all to help you celebrate tomorrow's holiday. But he says, happy 4th. Hook 'em for life. Be safe, family. Jerry Hamilton, Bobby, Blake, we all thank you for everything that you do. And we thank you guys for tuning in. It wouldn't be possible without y'all and all your support out there. So thank you for that. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Ring the bell so you're notified anytime they go live or post a video. And then head on over to ontexasfootball.com. If you haven't become a member, you can easily, using promo code OTFOG. It'll get you a full year for $39.95. You can't beat that deal. Around the clock coverage from Jerry, Bobby, CJ. Great stuff there. So between those two avenues, we have you covered. You won't miss a thing. Be sure to check it out. And for Bobby Burton and Jerry, I do need to say thank you to Adam Lowy and Manscaped as well for sponsoring today's show. So now then, for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Hook 'em, guys.